If Steve Jobs knew what Apple was going to become these days, I promise you he will be scrolling in his grave. As we all know, the both co-founders of Apple are Steven Wozniak and Steve Jobs. They're 5 years apart, Steve Jobs being the younger one. They both met when Steve Jobs was in high school and Stephen Wozniak was in college. Did you know that they both dropped out of college and they still made a successful industry? Let me talk to you a little bit about that. Let's start with Steve Jobs. Do you know that he had trouble growing up with his classmates, with his teachers? Why? His mother taught him how to read when he was a toddler. So as he began to read, he began to want to learn more. So he began to read books, to read flyers, read everything he could to learn more, to be as smart as he could for his age. So when he got to middle school, when he got to high school, when he got to kindergarten, he thought he knew it all. He thought he knew more than his teachers, so he had trouble with authority. He didn't respect authority, so he got a lot of problems with his teachers. He got suspended a lot of times because of this. You know, he just didn't respect authority, and as most of his teammates will call him, he was a loner. Why? Because, again, he thought he was smarter than most people, right? So he became a loner because he didn't think that most of his friends, most of his classmates were up to his level. He thought he was smarter than most of them, right? So he had no friends, which led him to be a mechanist, you know, because it's more of like a loner job. You just go in there, you do your own thing. His dad was also a mechanist, so his dad was really proud that his son was being a mechanist, that his son was following his footsteps, right? So as proud as his dad was, he built them in their own garage, in their house. He built them a mechanist station, you know, so he could advance his abilities, so he could learn more, so he could bring in cars and he can do whatever he wanted, right? Which he started doing that, you know, he started looking at his dad making all these progress, you know, he started learning from his dad. But then he met Steven Wozniak, you know, who was also a really smart guy, who was really into electronics, just like he was, right? So they both had the great idea to combine their brains and form Apple, okay? So their garage that was meant to be for a mechanist now became a garage meant to be for an electronic industry, right? So Steven Wozniak was in charge of creating the products, you know, because he was more into electronic. He began to invent this computer, you know, because he thought that it was better for people to have a small computer to bring into their office, to bring to school, you know. So he began creating products. And then Steve Jobs was in charge of marketing those products, because that's what the field he liked the most, right? So they're marketing all these products and make profit out of it. Then sadly, Steven Wozniak gets into a plane crash, which he was piloting, right? He gets into a plane crash. He has amnesia when he comes back. He has really bad injuries. So he decides to give makes Steve Jobs the CEO of Apple, right? Because he couldn't handle it anymore. He was injured. He had amnesia, right? So he started going into a lot of numerous adventures, you know. He found a lot of industries, you know. He was just living his life, you know, going out there in the world, while Steve Jobs changed his personality completely, you know. Steven Wozniak goes back to saying that Steve Jobs used to be this really fun guy, you know. He used to go to concerts, pull pranks on people, you know. He used to enjoy life. Once Steve Wozniak named him the CEO, Steve Jobs became this serious person, you know, who didn't just worried about work, you know, working nonstop, you know, not for anything. Apple is the industry it is now, you know. Who could tell you that this little thing can make you so happy? You know, so this is the story of them, you know, how they became so successful, how, you know, from having so little in this world, they became the CEOs of Apple.